express their opinion and to be able to hold peaceful demonstrations without running the risk of being injured or even killed by the security forces.
Libya isn't that far away, is it, from Europe? A lot at stake in terms of immigration, in terms of the wealth which Libya has.
Yes, I mean, there's matters at stake both in economic terms. Libya, of course, the fourth largest producer of oil in Africa. It exports to Italy, Germany, Spain and France, so a very crucial supplier of energy to Europe. And as well, Europe has been very much dependent on the goodwill and the cooperation of Libya in the fight against illegal immigration. Libya has a 2,000-kilometre-long coastline. Europe really relies on the Libyans to patrol that coastline to stop illegal immigrants running through. And the Libyans have already indicated that they are going to play hardball with Europe. They're really unhappy about these statements from the EU, which appear to be supporting, the Libyans would say encouraging, the pro-democracy demonstrators, and they've threatened to suspend all cooperation on illegal immigration if the EU carries on making these kind of statements.
Well, we'll see what does come out then. Thanks so much. Jackie Rowland from Brussels. And the French government spokesman says the international community must do everything it can to prevent Libya from sinking into civil war.
We are very worried and quite shocked. We firmly condemn everything that is happening. This is unbelievable violence. It can fall into civil war that is extraordinarily violent and long. It has already begun, and we've got to do everything on a diplomatic level. Coordinate with the American positions and that of the European Union to prevent a drama from taking place.
Well, Dr. Arif Nayed is a leading Libyan religious scholar and academic. He's also a spokesman for the traditional scholars and elders of the Warfala tribe, one of the largest tribes in Libya. He joins me now live from Ankara in Turkey. I understand you've just left Turkey. First of all, tell me about the situation in the areas you've left.
Yes, I left Tripoli yesterday and arrived in Ankara last evening. The last demonstration I was in Fashlum area, where 4 people were shot dead and many youth were arrested. The gun wounds of these injured and killed youth were showing strange kinds of weapons where the bullets basically fragment. And that was the last thing I witnessed personally. I was then asked by the elders of my tribal grouping, Warfala, and especially its religious scholars and Sufi sheikhs, to fly out and contact world press to convey the following message. The Warfala tribal grouping, which forms an integral part of the grouping, the bigger grouping that includes the Awlad Sliman, the Zintan, and the Gaddafi tribe, completely renounce and denounce the Gaddafi regime and its tactics, especially the incredibly gruesome slaughter of our brothers and sisters in Benghazi and in the eastern region, and now the same slaughter that we are seeing in Tripoli these days. There are literally hundreds of dead and thousands of wounded, and they are being shot in cold blood using heavy machinery, machine guns and even anti-aircraft machine guns. This constitutes a crime against humanity, and especially a crime against God's guidance on how to deal with human beings. In Islam, human life is sanctified. This sanctity has been violated with total impunity. Around 50 religious scholars issued a statement a couple of days ago warning Muslim brothers and sisters.
Just to clarify there, you mentioned... Did you mention that the Al-Qaddafi sub-tribe, which Al-Qaddafi, of course, hails from, has also denounced support of Qaddafi?
No. What I can tell you is that the Gaddafi themselves include some honorable people who still remain poor and oppressed. The Awlad Ammar, for example, who have their own vengeance within the Gaddafi clan, and there are also other sub-clans of the Gaddafi group. What I can tell you is the following, that Warfala and the scholars from Bani Walid and the Warfala living in Tripoli have asked me to convey that they completely condemn all this violence and all this basically genocide, and disassociate themselves completely from Gaddafi and his children and anybody who's polluted by these crimes.
All right, we are running out of time, unfortunately. We'll have to leave it there. Dr. Arif Nayed, thanks so much for talking to us. Well, reports from Sudan say the country's president, Omar al-Bashir, will not stand in the next elections. Sudan's ruling National Congress Party says it'll field another candidate in 2015. Bashir was elected president of Sudan in 1993 following a bloodless coup 4 years earlier. His victory in last year's general election was criticized by Sudan's opposition parties. Well, at least 5 people have been killed in a suicide bombing in the Somali capital, Mogadishu. The blast happened next to the Hamar Jabab police station early on Monday. A local policeman tells Reuters news agency he saw a car filled with explosives speeding towards the compound. Several policemen were reportedly killed. A suicide bomber in Iraq has killed at least 10 people and wounded 15 others. The attack in the northern city of Samarra targeted a police building used to shelter Shiite pilgrims. A police officer says the final death toll could rise. The sole surviving gunman of the Mumbai attacks in 2008 will face the death sentence. That's been confirmed after an Indian court upheld an earlier decision to execute him. Mohammed Ajmal Amir Qasab was found guilty of taking part in the attacks, which killed 166 people and wounded more than 300 others. He's expected to make a final appeal to the Indian Supreme Court. Well, from New Delhi, our correspondent Prerna Suri says Qasab still has other options left to overturn the sentence.
It is going to take some more time before the death sentence against Mohammed Ajmal Qasab can be carried out, because under the Indian law, anybody who's been given the death sentence can take his or her appeal to the Supreme Court. That's the highest court in this country. In case the Supreme Court also upholds the death sentence, Mr. Qasab has another option of taking his mercy petition to the president of this country. Now, usually in the past, we've seen in such cases that it's a fairly long, drawn-out process. It takes many years before the case can come to any logical end. Mr. Qasab's defense team, of course, have been maintaining that their client is innocent, that he was merely manipulated by armed insurgent groups in Pakistan who asked him to carry out these attacks in India. But the judges at today's High Court in Maharashtra, they were quite clear. They used some very strong language in their judgment. They said that Mr. Qasab was personally responsible for the deaths of 7 people, including a top counter-terrorism official, and that this was not just any attack, but this was an attack on India's sovereignty. Mr. Qasab, who wasn't at the court proceedings at that time, he was actually watching all of this from his prison cell via video conference, didn't visibly react when the verdict was read out.
Well, in China, a severe drought has forced the government to look for alternative ways to find water. They've been digging deep underground in search of much-needed resources. But as Melissa Chan finds out, this may create an even bigger problem.
Rows and rows of young wheat crop, tufts amidst the dry brown land. They say it's the worst drought Shandong province has seen in 200 years. China's in a crisis, but this is one for the world to watch as well.
Food security in China affects food security globally, simply because of China's population.